The following is a production of UNO Television for KYNE TV. Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome once again to Consider This. Consider this. A college senior has 3 hours to prepare for her first sit-down interview. She's scared. This guy's pretty well known. She bones up, she goes home and changes. She begs the guest, "I've never done this before, please make me look good." A quarter century later, she sees his name, sees he's in town and says, "I gotta do this again." My guest today is Art Buchwald.
Delighted.
Writer, author, humorist, columnist. I'm going to ask you the same question that I started out 25 years ago. How do you get to be a humorist?
Well, you have to have an unhappy childhood.
I could start. No.
I actually, my story is one, kind of a Pagliacci story in that when I was born, my mother was taken away from me with a mental disease, and my father had to put us in an orphanage, my 3 sisters and I, in New York. And I remember it very well. I was 6 years old, and I was going this way, and my sisters were going that way. And one sister yelled at me, "Don't sit on the toilet seat."
That was the advice you had
That
for
was
you.
the advice she gave me. About 8 or 9 years later, I thought to myself, this life is ridiculous. I'm going to become a humorist.
No, you didn't just say that.
I did, and I made the kids laugh. I made the kids laugh in public school. I made them laugh in high school. And then I went in the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps doesn't have too much use for people who laugh. So I didn't do too well there. But all my life, I've been dealing with the craziness of what's going on in our society. Not necessarily the writing part of it, but just how mad and crazy we all are.
And well, there has got to be some humor in that, because there's a light and a dark side to everything. I mean, there's the craziness in the sense that things become very complicated and burdensome, but then you have to be able to look at the light side, the witty side, and that's probably how you survived.
Well, you also survive because you, if you just think, you have to go into some sort of creativity. And when you go into creativity, you and I, we make up our own lives. And it's a much better life than anything that you can come up with. So I made up my life, and I decided this is what I wanted to do, this is what I wanted to do. And through the years, I managed to enjoy myself and getting even with a lot of people. Getting even is very important to humor.
Well, now that might sound like you're just not a real nice person. And most people I know think you're pretty okay. You're philanthropically certainly a great contributor.
No, you don't have to be not a nice person. Here are some of the things that I've had a good time with. I didn't graduate from college, and they gave me an honorary degree. I spoke at the orphanage where I was raised, and they made me the Speaker of the Year. The Marine Corps is constantly honoring me for the great work I did in the Marine Corps, which is not true, but I accept it. So all these things is getting even. I'm sitting there enjoying myself, coming to Omaha, which I probably wouldn't have been in a long time. But it all adds up to the same thing. You've been there, you've done something that you're kind of pleased with, and that's it.
Before we go any farther, I want to mention why you're in Omaha. You're here under the auspices of Community Alliance,
Yes.
and you're their main dinner speaker.
Yeah.
October is Mental Health Month, Mental Health Awareness Month. You mentioned that your mother was mentally ill, which is one of the reasons you were not able to stay with her. You've had bouts with depression, much as a Nebraska native, Dick Cavett, and have come out and talked about it. Does this all tie in, you know, the creativity, the depression? There's ups, downs. I'm not saying bipolar or anything, but I mean, is this part of the good and the bad, or were these, you know, just clinical depressions that came into your life that you didn't understand when they came in?
My message is, I am not a poster boy for depression. I do it because Larry King got me to do it eventually. But I did discover that I had two depressions. One was a manic depression and one was a regular depression. I discovered, having gone through them, and they're pretty horrible, I don't recommend them, that I became a better person, a better writer, and a better human being. And having discovered that, and I go out and I give that message to people like here in Omaha, it's very important to people, because if somebody like me can have lived through this kind of a life, it helps them very much. And one doctor said to me in Johns Hopkins, he was laughing and he said, you know, they believe you, but they don't believe us.
I think there's something to that. I have a brother who has bipolar disorder. I have gone through a bout of clinical depression, and people think that this is just something that happens to crazy people, or that it's, you know, buck up, baby. This is not a big deal. But when your life is walking through peanut butter, you know.
But there's certain things that have to be constantly let through to people. One is that with the medicines now, your chances of being helped are so much greater than they ever have been before. Prozac, Cozal, Paxil, there's so many of them. And the reason why they're there is there's so much money to be made on them.
Well, that's a good point.
You can make a whole fortune from these drugs. But they're there, and they do help people, and therefore you can get something that you couldn't get 10 years ago from people. You couldn't get it 10 years ago. You can now get help from people, and like most people I know, if they get lucky, they get through it.
Let me ask you this, Art. When you first had one or both of these bouts, let's say the first one, did you know what was happening to you? I mean, you're a man that has...
Well, the first one, I was really in trouble because I was very suicidal, and I was afraid to kill myself because I was afraid the New York Times wouldn't put it in the paper. So my big fear was that de Gaulle would die the same day I did. So I didn't kill myself on that. The second time was different because I was manic. Now, there's a thing about manic and regular depression. When you're manic, the world is yours. You can run down the street, you can do 4-minute miles, you can do anything you want, and you don't know you're doing any of it. You can even give away the fortune if you want. And so that's the manic part. Now you crash. Everybody crashes that's in a manic depression. And when you crash, then you get into real trouble, and I don't recommend it.
But you're a man of some financial means, and so that you can get the medical help you need. And I think that there are a lot of reasons people don't seek help. One is they don't know what's happening. And two, they feel there's a stigma now, and if they really knew how many people had suffered some form of depression, they wouldn't feel that way. And number three, they feel they can't afford it, that it's out of their means. And some mental health treatments are...
That's fair, and I believe, I may be talking out of turn, but I believe the Alliance was started to take care of people like this who don't know where to get help, who can't afford what it takes. We're fighting constantly with the government for more money to take care of all of us, because it's a very expensive process. So I think, without speaking too strongly about it, an organization like Alliance in your state is a godsend because people know how to pick up the phone and ask for help.
I don't think you're speaking out of turn because I think you're right in my experience with the organization. One of the funny things that people don't know is that when they go there, they have the employee meetings for insurance, let's say at their companies, and no one ever asks, what is my coverage for mental health? Because no one thinks it will happen to them or their children or their teenagers. And all of a sudden they can find out like that they've met the cap. The cap on medical is way high.
You're absolutely right. And the thing that they're the most right about is that if you're up for a promotion with an automobile company or with a tractor company, and it comes up on the screen that you had depression, you don't get the promotion.
A lot of people don't even file their insurance for that very reason.
Insurance is a tough business when it comes to sickness because we're still very much suspicious of anybody who has got problems, mental illness problems. You can have a broken leg, you can have all sorts of diseases, and everybody accepts it. But you have a mental illness, and it's not very popular, and the insurance companies don't like it.
Well, one of the funny things that people don't realize is that, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, that if your body stops producing insulin, we all know what that is. That means you're diabetic. And we've gone to, people have great empathy for that, and someone that tries to control their disease and works very hard at it. But if your brain stops producing serotonin or something like that, I mean, no one gets it, and no one even is real sympathetic sometimes. And you can help that, just like you can, and that doesn't cover all mental illness, but that's just an example.
Well, we should talk for 1 minute about the fact that you may have a person in your family who's suffering. You're suffering, not that person. And all over the world now, in this country, people are suffering because their loved ones are suffering. And this is what we've been trying to deal with now, is to make it possible for people who are taking care of depressed people to help them, because we are blamed. We are blamed for the depression. The person who has a depression blames his loved one. And you have to stop that because the price is too great.
A little more sympathy. We have caretakers for people that are caretaking someone with Alzheimer's or someone with cancer, but we forget about the caretaker of someone who has a mental illness, and that's a real tough one. That's a real tough one.
Yeah, but it's all coming along all at the same time, and as I maintain, the reason for it is there's money to be made. Once you can make money in drugs, you can do pretty well with people.
Well, honey, impotence has been around for a long time, and until they figured they had Viagra in their hand,
that could change all of us.
no one. Well, I don't know if maybe it could change me. But the incentive wasn't there until someone stumbled on something and knew it could make a few bucks. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just need a lot more awareness all the way around, and that's why you're getting involved, at least speaking out.
We are now in a stage, a medical stage, in which there are so many new drugs, there's so many new things going on, and you take people who are 80 and 90 years old, who can hardly walk, hardly think and everything, and you have no role for them in our society, and yet we're saving their lives all the time. Nobody's working too hard on what you do with people whose lives you save.
That's a whole interesting premise. We could go on and on about that for hours. But mind if we get back to some funniness, some funny business?
Go ahead.
Just to perk up a little bit.
Lewinsky?
You beat me by about 10 seconds. First, I want to ask you before we get to that. I read a column of yours when all this sort of broke. I think you published it back in March, but as a journalist, it was something that was bothering me. 4 bazillion unnamed sources. This whole thing was the case. You didn't say 4 bazillion, but you talked about Washington, an unnamed source. You know, a columnist is always could take some liberties. Journalists, we weren't supposed to take very many liberties. We were supposed, if we had unnamed sources, they had to be corroborated and this and that. I think we've changed the game here with this tennis star Monica Lewinsky. Is that a good thing?
I can't take any kind of blame for Lewinsky, what she did.
Well, I would think not.
In fact, I really don't know what she did. But it certainly makes a good story. It keeps everybody awake at night, and we were watching it. We know about Lewinsky. We know about Miss Tripp. We know about all those characters, and including the President of the United States. And it seems to please us all. It gives us pleasure that we can talk about these people. I don't say it's good or bad, but it gives us pleasure.
Why? Because he screwed up?
I don't know. That's something, I don't know I'm allowed to say this on the air, but it has something to do with sex. And none of the other scandals, including Watergate, had anything to do with sex. This one has to do with sex. And people seem to be very fascinated with the idea that it had to do with sex.
I mean, even the people that say, well, the real thing is that he lied.
Oh, yeah, those people especially.
You know, do you write as much as you used to? I would assume you've slowed down just a little. Is that an assumption I shouldn't be making?
What, making...
that you're not writing as much as you used to?
No, that unfortunately has to do with the papers and not me. I'm writing the same, but the papers aren't printing as many.
But they still are printing your stuff.
Yeah, but there's sort of a shortage of newspaper features in the country right now. You have to live with that.
You think there's a shortage? I think maybe everybody thinks they can be a columnist. Maybe there's just too many. And
no, you don't get that as much as you do as professors writing articles in their papers, and you get conservatives, a lot of conservatives. No, I gave up on hoping that they'd use me. I'd like it, but I gave up on hoping they'd lose me.
Well, they still use you once in a while. What's your favorite subject these days?
Well, I'll be very honest. It is the subject that we've been talking about because it's easy.
It is easy.
And everybody enjoys it. And if I write to you about the budget of Kosovo, you will not read that story. I guarantee you will not read it.
I would say that the Monica Lewinsky, President Clinton thing has gotten a lot heavier reading than the problems of the Albanians in Kosovo.
It's just like a mystery story. You got everything about it has a mystery to it. The taping of the gal, the famous dress. It's all. It makes us all feel good.
Do you think Americans? You've been all over the world, and do you think that if this would have happened in France or Canada or Germany, that they would have the same preoccupation and the lack of occupation with more serious things, or do you think it's?
I don't think the Europeans would be that upset about things.
Well, what is it about us?
Well, what is it about us is we got a president of the United States who admitted after 6 months that he did something bad, and we can't believe our presidents would do bad things like that. But since he did it, we all bought it. I mean, nothing's happened in terms of, it's 62%, 63%. Clinton is still respected by all these people. Republicans are out to get him, and they can't get him. Nothing's happened with something that we think should have happened. I didn't know anything about it, by the way.
Anything about what?
What was going on all that time.
Oh, you didn't have an inside track, scoop, anything?
No, and I don't know if they kept me away from it. But I'm scared silly that if this story is over with, then we have to go on to something else. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the Chinese.
Well, there's a lot of them. You ought to be able to come up with something.
A lot. and they're all wearing my fur coat.
Oh no, oh no. If you were going to give some advice to someone that wanted to be the Art Buchwald of the next quarter century, what would you say? What will give them first the notoriety that was yours and then the longevity?
You have to have the desire to get the story, which is, you really have to be a newspaper reporter. In order to be a newspaper reporter, you have to maybe let things go in terms of what's true and what isn't true.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm brokenhearted as a journalist.
Yeah, I'm sorry I said that.
It's all right. But you're a columnist, so you can say that. You can say, you can do
say
anything you
anything
want.
I want.
Is that the beauty of it?
The beauty of it is, yes. The beauty of it is coming out here, lecturing, meeting people like you, which I wouldn't do ordinarily, trying to figure out where this country is going at the moment with elections. We have elections and no one's paying any attention to them whatsoever. If the Democrats win because of it, it's going to be a big deal for Clinton. But people they're very confused now.
Well, why are they confused? Because the moral standard of their country or the top guy has crossed the line? Or are they confused because maybe it's just that time in our evolution as a country where we're confused?
If you ask me, I'm confused because we had a president that did unbelievable things in the White House and admitted it, and nobody's bothered by it. That's why I'm confused.
You mean we haven't stormed the White House, or do you think maybe we'll show it at the elections? If you listen to the talk shows, there seem to be a few people bothered. But you mean by and large we're not up in arms?
No, I've never been up in arms. I was never even up in arms on Nixon.
But what about the rest of us? Are you bothered that we're not up in arms as a
I have to make you happy. That's my only job in life.
Is that what a columnist does?
Yeah.
But you have to be a little absurd, a little off the wall. Look at something in a way to continue to be popular that nobody else looks at something. You have to be an original. You're kind of an original.
What you're trying to do is call attention to things. So, for example, my column today, which I wrote, was about Gates and the Justice Department, and Gates being sued by the Justice Department. And this squirrely little guy with red hair, he's funny for me.
Why? You must see something funny in everything, but why is Bill Gates,
Well, he's
the master of all he sees?
He's the richest man in America, which is fun. Secondly, he's obviously brilliant for what he does, and he's trying to steal all the software, but the Justice Department says that, so I have to take a side.
And whose side are you taking?
I am taking the Justice Department against the little redhead.
So who's the bad guy?
There are no bad guys. I mean, let's assume that Bill Gates didn't win. I think he still will be the richest man in America.
I think you're probably... Do you have to take a side? Do you have to find a bad guy or a bad gal and everything to sort of, you know, distill it to make it entertaining?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of your business, and if you read it and agree with me, then I'm in good trouble.
You're in good trouble. What if I don't agree with you? Do I write you or what?
I'll be out of town before I know.
What is the most favorite book of all that you've written to you? What holds a place in your
Leaving
heart?
Home is the story of my life. And secondly is I'll Always Have Paris, which is the story of 14 years in Paris with my wife, 3 children, and I was the king of Paris at that time.
You were the king?
I was the king. I made myself the food and wine expert of the Herald Tribune, and when the editor asked me where I got those credentials, I said I was a food taster in the Marine Corps.
You just make that up?
Yeah.
So basically, the lesson of your life is do what you want as long as it's not evil, and make it up as you go along.
And not take myself seriously.
You don't take the things you write and say seriously?
I don't think I take myself seriously. I think it's all a gag. I think it's all a joke.
What's going to happen when you meet your maker?
Die?
No, I said when you meet your maker. However you may choose to do that,
When
die
I
or
reach
otherwise.
When I reach my maker? Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of a thing called mitzvah? A mitzvah is a good deed. If I do a good deed, then God writes it in the book. St. Peter writes it in the book. And then when you go to heaven, they count up all the mitzvahs. And if you have enough, you're in good shape. I have quite a few mitzvahs now.
Well, as a Jewish man, is a bar mitzvah then good deeds you perform at a bar?
No.
Oh, okay. No.
Bar mitzvah.
Just wanted to know. No, I
bar
know.
mitzvah.
I know what
Well,
it is.
mitzvah's a good thing.
But you think you got a few good things racked up
A
there?
lot. A lot.
What's the worst thing you ever did?
The worst thing I ever did? I don't think I can remember that, which is funny.
Your overall,
I've been a good father,
well,
fairly good grandfather. And the type of thing I do, people don't get too nervous about or excited or mad. That's very good.
well, then you're a pretty lucky man.
I consider myself a very lucky man. I consider myself lucky to be in Omaha, and I really consider myself, if I can, give a message tonight that will help 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 people in the audience who are hoping that I have the answer.
And the answer is?
The answer is you do get over depression. You do beat it. And once you beat it, you're a better person, you're a better human being, and it's a curable disease.
Well, I think I'm a better person for having interviewed you twice in 25 years. I want to thank you. There are clients at Community Alliance waiting with bated breath to see you, so we'll cut you loose, and the clock says we have to end it anyway. Thank you very much. Art
Thank
Buchwald.
you.
Thank you for joining us on Consider This. Next week, we talk about both sides of that controversial initiative 413. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's all she wrote.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health,